Mento, the Alpha Awareness Tape of the Month Club, tape number 17, Flow with the Universe, prepared by Verle Mento, distributed by Alpha Awareness Tape Distribution Center, Box 8238, Spokane, Washington, 99203. This is a special tape, and we say a special hello because this is the last of a series of 17 tapes that I've had the privilege to share with you over the last 17 months. This is an important tape, Flow with the Universe. Flow with the universe, your natural genius ability when released and set free, will allow you to flow through life receiving all the peace and good that life can give. The universe flows in the direction of being, doing, and having. Most of us approach life feeling we have to have before we can do, before we can be. Anything you be in consciousness, anything you hold in consciousness just in being, will naturally flow into doing, into having the results of that. Example, if you get out of bed in the morning being depressed, it takes no effort, absolutely no effort to be depressed all day long. You do the depressed things and then you have the depressed results. If you get out of bed in the morning being happy, it takes no effort to do happy things and have happy results. The universe flows naturally and normally and without effort from being, doing to having. However, most of us approach it from having to doing to being. We have to have something before we can do something, before we can be something. We have to have money before we can go out and do what people do with money, before we can be rich. That's the fallacy. You can get there that way. But the universe naturally and normally flows without effort, just by being that millionaire and doing what millionaires do and having the results. Just naturally being happy and no effort is involved to do happy things and have happy results. We all flow with the universe. We flow very easily with the universe, but usually in a negative way. The morning you get out of bed being depressed, does it take any effort to do depressed things? Run your car into the garage so that you have something to be depressed about? No, it takes no effort when we get out of bed in the mental attitude in the morning that way. So if we'll become totally aware of the flow of the universe, recognize we can get there either way. Most people have approached it by having to have before they'd go out and do, before they could be. And that's okay. It's just more work, it's more blood, it's more sweat, it's more tears. But with our awareness, and alpha awareness, if we'll turn our consciousness around and become totally aware of the direction the universe flows, we can let these things come into our life with no effort. I want to do something special on this tape. This tape will be a C90. Most of the tapes we've cut for this series have been C60s. This means you have 45 minutes on each side of this tape. And I want to and will introduce to you one of the greatest awareness teachers in the world today. This person happens to be very close to me. He speaks in a different tone, a different voice, but he's clear, concise, and to the point. I would like to share with you this evening a class that was an exceptional class that he taught, and it was in Salt Lake City, Utah, where people sat and listened and changes took place in their lives. I too sat and listened in this class and changes took place in my life. A class that we have put together as we work together through the last 7 years of awareness. I want to share with you my brother, Wally Mento, a special person who will share with us this class, Flow with the Universe. So let us sit back now and relax and listen. And after hearing his message, we will then discuss, rediscuss, add and make comments in specific areas to further enlighten us. Let me impress upon you as you listen to him and his voice and to me, not to judge the statements, just listen. Become aware of all the statements made. You can judge them later. Take the parts that are right for you and release the parts that are not. You see, when we begin to judge an idea, we get so involved in that idea that we miss the next two phrases or the next two paragraphs of the book or the speaker that we're listening to. So sit back and relax and listen to one of the greatest awareness teachers in the world today. He wouldn't tell you that, but I will tell you that because I know it's true. So at this point, I would like to introduce him to you, my younger brother, a little shorter, a little slimmer, a different voice, a different dialogue, a different delivery, but that's okay. Because as we participate together, we learn together. So sit back and listen I give you a Salt Lake City class, Flow with the Universe, and my brother Wally.
Okay, good evening, everybody. For those of you I haven't personally met, my name is Wally Mento, and I'd certainly like to extend you a very warm welcome to the Alpha Awareness Seminar on how to achieve natural results in any area in life that you desire. And now that we've got your $10 from each of you, we can go ahead and get started. I really wish, though, that I could have charged you $10,000 apiece to attend this seminar, because if you sit through the evening looking for $10 of value, you probably leave this evening wondering why you came. I'm afraid, though, if I had it, that probably the only one that would be here would be the lovely brunette at the back of the room, who is my lovely wife, Kay, because she gets in free of charge. She certainly is a catalyst to my success in life in the teaching of the Alpha Awareness seminars. But I really want you to realize, friends, that if you sit through the class looking for $10 worth of benefit, you'll probably leave wondering why you came. You'll probably miss the whole concept of the class, because you see it really is a $10,000 or a $100,000 class. And the reason being is because it's going to be different from most seminars, classes, lectures that you might have previously attended, because this seminar is not designed in any way to give you any knowledge. Most of you already have enough of that, and probably some of you too much already. You probably all know of an individual who has a cranium crammed full of knowledge without an ounce of enlightenment or understanding to go with it. And you see, knowledge without understanding or enlightenment is pretty much useless. So tonight, as we go through the seminar, we are not going to seek knowledge, but rather we are going to seek to understand and gain enlightenment of the knowledge that we already have. And if you're really wondering what enlightenment is the ahas that you experience in life. And any time you experience an aha, you are experiencing enlightenment in that area. You know, when you're going through your daily routine and all of a sudden you say, aha, I know what it means. That's enlightenment. And so tonight we'd like you to experience some ahas about the knowledge that you already have. But so that you might experience more ahas as we go through the evening, I want you to realize that you're all already getting natural results in one particular area. And that's this area of mind wandering. You might say we're all professional mind wanderers. And so let's discuss mind wandering for just a moment, what caused it, so that we might eliminate it as we go on through the evening. First of all, how many of you in the room mentally talk to yourselves? How many of you mentally talk to yourselves? Okay, very honest group. How many mentally talk to yourselves? Quite a bit. Okay, how many of you do it all the time? Okay, we got a few honest ones left. You mentally talk to yourself every moment of your waking hours. In other words, while I'm standing up here talking to you, you are sitting there talking to yourself. And that might seem awfully impolite, but that's what's going on, and many times I stand up here and wonder what you're talking about. Now, the problem of mind wandering is not caused simply by the fact that you mentally talk to yourself, but it's caused by the fact that you mentally talk to yourself about 4 times as fast as I'm talking to you. So in the old comparison, we might say that my voice, or what I'm saying, is a high-speed express train going along the tracks at 100 miles an hour. And your mental self-talk is a jet traveling at 400 miles an hour. Now, if you have a train going 100 miles an hour and a jet going at 400 miles an hour, and you want to keep the two of them together, how might you do it? Yeah, somebody always says, slow it down. People, you can't slow your self-talk down. In fact, when I shut up, you'll speed up. So you can't slow the jet down. So what else might you do? Yeah, how about having the plane circle? Trains traveling at 100 miles an hour and a jet just circles at 400 miles an hour, you see? Now, hopefully some of you are getting a few ahas at this moment. Because, you see, I just told you how to stop mind wandering. How many of you have been reading a book, and you get over to the end of the chapter, and all of a sudden you realize you don't know what you're reading? Ever happened to you? That's because your self-talk went off 400 miles an hour in a different direction. And you see, all you have to do is just self-talk about each paragraph as you read it. And you can read the text, close it, take a test at the end of the semester, and you'll pass with 100%. It's that simple, if you'll self-talk about what you're reading. So it's true of anything in life. When you're listening to a lecture and you really want to get what the lecture's about, don't judge the pros and cons of the lecture, whether it's right or wrong, good or bad. Just self-talk about what's being said. You see, and then you can judge it all and accept or reject what you want to after the lecture's over. So as we go on through this evening, if you'll self-talk about what I'm saying and not worry about whether it's right or wrong, whether it'll work for you or won't work for you, whether it's far out or far in, but just self-talk about it. And then accept and reject those parts of it that you want to after the lecture's over, you will experience some real ahas this evening. you'll go away understanding what was being said here this evening. Now, I do want you to realize, though, that you're going to have one other little problem in this particular seminar, and that's the fact that you're going to resist about 90% of the concepts that we talk about this evening. Because, you see, this evening we're going to talk about how to get natural results without effort. And you've got very few brain cell impressions that go in that direction. Because nearly every brain cell pattern that you have impressed upon brains tells you it's a lot of effort to get any kind of results in life, right? You see? So you're going to resist it. So realize that. Now, to help you break down this resistance, you're going to need an open mind. So let's discuss for a moment what an open mind is. And I would assume that probably all of you who would come to a seminar, lecture of this type, are probably pretty open-minded people, or you wouldn't be here in the first place. And I'm sure that you've gone through life really trying your best in everything you've done. Haven't you, when you say that? You've really gone through life trying your best. But you realize when you go through life trying your best, you've got a mind locked up just like that. And that's reality. Now, you housewives ought to be aware of that. Because when you ask the husband to carry out the garbage, and he says, well, honey, I'll try my best, who ends up carrying out the garbage? Yeah, the wife does, doesn't she? You see, if you'd really analyze it, of all the things in your life that you said, I'm really going to try and get that done today, you've probably only done about 10% of them. So the moment you say, I'm going to try my best, the subconscious says, well, our odds are only 10%. That's not very good odds, you see? You got a 90% chance of failure. So the subconscious doesn't really get too concerned when you try your best. It doesn't really push you in that direction because it knows 90% of the time you never get it done anyway. And why should it be concerned with it, you see? So the open mind simply does things. The open mind uses things. The closed mind tries things. And I really want you to be aware of that as you're mulling this seminar over in your mind during the next 2-3 weeks, that if you're going to try the principles and the concepts, you have about a 10% chance of success. If you'll use them, you have about a 99% chance of success. That's your odds. Now, to help you go through it with an open mind, because you are going to resist a lot of it, think of all the concepts and keep them in this perspective. You see, if you are very depressed, but you pretend and act like you're happy, you're going to achieve more happiness, aren't you? The results are you're going to be happier. Isn't that true? Don't we all agree with that? But that's not true, is it? I mean, if you're depressed, you're depressed. You're not happy. You see, that's not a truth. But if you apply that perspective, it will give you the results of more happiness, which is what you really desire. So let's keep that perspective of the concepts that we discussed this tonight. It doesn't matter whether they're true or not true. It doesn't matter whether they're real or not real. It doesn't matter whether they're right or wrong. If you can apply them in perspective, in that perspective, and they give you the results in life that you want, then they're worth using. So keep that perspective as we talk about some of these things that your brain cell patterns you have impressed upon your brain cells are going to cause you to resist in the beginning. And the first thing that we want to become aware of as we open up these concepts is how we as a human being normally become something. For instance, if we have a young girl who wants to become a dancer, what must happen for her to become a dancer? What must she do first? What must happen? Okay, she must have training, right? What else must she have? She must practice, right? What else? Must have desire, yes. What else? Must have money, very true. What else must she have? Must have talent. Must have determination. Must have a teacher. Yeah, she must do it, okay? But she's got to have all these things first. Now, notice this entire list that we made up was all the things that this child must have. And it's interesting that when we as human beings start out to become something, we always start out with all the things we have to have before we can be that particular thing. All the things this girl must have before she can become a dancer. So she starts off with all the things that she must have. Once she has all these things, her costume, the teacher, the money, the desire, and the ability, and on and on and on, the things we named, then what happens? What's next? Yeah, practice. She must practice dancing, learning how to dance, right? So she starts in doing what dancers do. She starts practicing and learning steps and balance and poise and posture and curtsies and so on and so forth. And then once she's done all these things that a dancer does, what finally must happen before she can become a dancer? What does it require of her to finally be a dancer? What's required? Okay, she has to think she's a dancer, but don't you all know people who really think they're dancers, but they aren't really a dancer, are they? Okay, so that won't do it. You see, that's again something she must have, right? Or do. She must think she's a dancer. So she's still in the doing state, and that doesn't cause her to be a dancer. What must happen before she finally becomes a dancer? Okay, somebody has to discover her. This is true, but if only one person discovers her, has she become a dancer? No. So what really must happen? She has to be recognized. Yes, we're getting very, very close. So, in being recognized means that she's getting agreement, right? In other words, if she gets up and goes through a debut and all of her fancy steps and all the rest, and the audience stands up and applauds and gives her a standing ovation, she has become a dancer, hasn't she? They have agreed with her. But if they all get up and walk out, has she become a dancer? No, I don't care how well she's done the steps, she has not become a dancer until the audience agrees that she's become a dancer, right? And so to go from doing into being, she must become a dancer. She must have agreement from other people to become the dancer. Now, that's the way human beings normally become anything in life that they're going to become. That's the way they become a doctor, that's the way they become a housewife, that's the way they become successful, that's the way they become rich. They start off with all the things they have to have, and they start doing all the things, and then they finally become rich, successful, a doctor, a dentist, a housewife, a secretary, whatever it may be. The only unfortunate thing of all this is that the whole universe flows in the opposite direction. The whole universe naturally, normally, flows from being into doing into having. And once in a while, we see a human being that flows with the universe. Once in a while, we see a little child and we say, well, what are you? And she says, I'm a dancer. I mean, she's only 6 or 7 years of age. She doesn't have ability. She doesn't have money. She doesn't have a teacher. She doesn't have a costume. And in a little tattered dress, she spins across the floor. And she's being a dancer, isn't she? And when she's 12 or 13, somebody asks, well, what are you? And she says, I'm a dancer. And again, she spins across the floor. And when she's 15 or 16, somebody discovers her and says, wow, she's a dancer. She's a natural. You see, she's been being a dancer all of her life, hasn't she? And you see, it's no effort for her when she's discovered then to start doing the things that dancers do, learning steps and learning all the posture and the form and the poise, and she ends up having all the things that dancers have. Now, she's got to go the full route no matter which direction she goes. It's just that it's a lot less effort if she goes from being a dancer into doing what dancers do and end up having what dancers have, right? Wasn't it a lot less effort for that girl than it was the girl that had to have all the things first, you see? Every now and then we see an individual who flows with the universe in that direction. And they accomplish their things in life without effort because they're flowing in the normal, natural flow of the universe. Now, I want you to realize that the difference between having and doing is the difference between the average individual and a group like you who are involved in positive thinking. You'll see, if you are studied in the area of positive thinking, goal structuring, metaphysics, cybernetics, something like this, you know then that you don't have to have money to become rich, do you? I mean, you can start off just doing the things that rich people do and think like a rich person, act like a rich person, talk like a rich person, believe like a rich person, and finally you'll become rich. Isn't that the whole theory of positive thinking? And it works. And it's a gigantic step forward from having to start out with have. The majority of the world still have to start out in having. I mean, they know if you're ever going to get rich, you've got to have money first, don't you? I mean, you can't get rich until you have money. So they scrimp and save and they pinch all their pennies until finally they have a little bit of money. And once they have a little bit of money, then they can start doing what rich people do. They can invest in the stock market and buy real estate and things like this until finally they can become rich. And it's okay because a lot of people get there that way. It's simply that the universe flows the other direction. But you see, even though all of you had had your training in positive thinking and cybernetics and goal structure and metaphysics, identify with the doing stage consciously. Because consciously you really don't identify with this having stage. You know you don't have to have money. So consciously you'll start out in doing. But what's really holding you back is subconsciously you're still starting in having. Subconsciously you still feel that you are what you have, that you have to have something to become something. And it's difficult to relate to that because consciously you're already here. But you see, to help you awaken to this realization, if I took the car that you drove to the seminary in this evening, and I took it out here and parked it in the middle of the street, and we had two big bulldozers lower their blade and come together on each end of your car and crushed it, what would happen to a little bit of you? Well, maybe you'd be crushed too, wouldn't it? Or if we took the home that you live in and we set a torch to the bottom of it and you watched your entire home and all the things you own in that home go up in a blaze, what would happen to a little bit of you? A little bit of you would be lost too. A little bit of you would go up in the blaze. You see, subconsciously, you're still clinging to the thought that you really are what you have, that you really have to have things to be something. And before it ever will become totally effective for you in positive thinking or cybernetics or any other method to start doing, you've got to let loose of this subconscious having. But I want you to realize that you have all flown naturally, normally, with the universe at one time or another. Most people unfortunately do it in a negative manner. In other words, you've probably found yourself one day or another of your life getting up being depressed. I mean, you just got up and you were just being depressed. Now, when you got up being depressed, did it take any effort to do what depressed people do and end up having all the unhappiness that depressed people have? There was no effort, was it? But stop and think of all the efforts it would take to become depressed. If you got up in the morning and said, let's see, what'll I be today? I think I'll be depressed, you know. Now, I've got to have something to be depressed about. Well, let's see, you know, the wife didn't iron my shirt, and, you know, the boss hates me, and, you know, I haven't had a raise. You know, those are things I have to be depressed about. And, then, you know, so you start then doing what depressed people do, you know, wallowing in all your self-pity, and finally you become depressed. I mean, wouldn't that be a lot more effort to become depressed in that manner than just start out being depressed and having what depressed people have? Now, the reason it's difficult and nearly impossible for an individual to start out in being instead of having or doing is because there's no agreement there. In other words, if you just start off being rich, I mean, you're going to leave here tonight and you're going to start being rich, you know, and tomorrow you meet one of your friends and they say, how's everything going? He says, fantastic. And you say, well, what's so great? He said, well, I'm rich. He says, well, gee, that's great. You know, maybe you can pay back the $50 I loaned you. And you say, well, you know, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I don't have any money. What's he going to say? Oh, it makes you think you're so rich, huh? I mean, you're crazy. You see, you don't get any agreement there. In other words, it's because we have a fear of being wrong. And it's because of this fear of being wrong that gives us a problem. We are so caught up in right and wrong that we can't start out in being without agreement. If we start in doing, in positive thinking, we can get quite a few people to agree with us. To start off in being, we have to start off without the agreement of other people. Or if we start off in being, we start off with the fear of other people telling us that we are wrong. And that's where the whole problem is created, is because we're so wrapped up, we are so programmed with right and wrong. You see, we as a human being have the tendency, if maybe we want a nice, great, big red tomato, and instead somebody just gives us a tomato seed, we say, but that's wrong, that's not right, because I want a tomato. But is not the perfection of the tomato within the tomato seed. And then maybe later on in life, somebody hands us a tomato seedling. We say, no, that's still wrong, you know, because I want a tomato. But isn't the perfection of the tomato still within the tomato seedling? And then maybe a little later on in life, somebody hands us a full-grown tomato plant. And we still say it's wrong, it's not right, because I want a tomato. But you see, the perfection of the tomato is still within the tomato plant. And so is the perfection of your inner self within you. That which is perfect always dwells within. It's always there. But you see, the difference between the tomato plant and the human being is that the human being has awareness. The human being is aware of this innate perfection of this inner self. The tomato plant is not. So as the tomato plant is growing up, the tomato plant doesn't, you know, a little tomato plant, he doesn't look at this big tomato plant over here and say, you know, there must be something wrong with me because he's bigger than I am. Or the big tomato plant doesn't look down at the little tomato plant and says, there's something wrong with you because I'm bigger than you are. You see, because they have no awareness, the only thing the tomato seed can do to the best of its ability is to express that perfection within it. No matter where you plant it or what kind of care you take of it, to the best of its ability, the only thing the tomato will do, tomato plant will do, is to express the perfection of the tomato within. But we as human beings have awareness of this perfection within. And you see, to have awareness of perfection is also to be aware of imperfection. To be aware of happiness is to be aware of depression. To be aware of success is to be aware of the failure. And so because we have an awareness of this innate perfection of the inner self, we are also aware of imperfection. And because of this, human beings then had to give them guidelines. In other words, we had to know when we were expressing this innate inner perfection and when we weren't. And so we created guidelines, and these guidelines became right and wrong. And the only problem with these guidelines is that they are a fallacy. As a judgment for expressing perfection, they are not real. You see, we were created here in perfection, in the image. And because of an awareness of that perfection, we said, well, okay, if we're expressing that perfection, we are being right. But if we're not expressing that perfection, we are being wrong. But they don't exist. You see, for every right in the world that you can give me, I can give you a whole society who will call that right wrong. For every wrong you can give me in the world, I can give you a whole society that will tell you that wrong is right. I mean, what makes something right or wrong? What single factor makes something right or wrong? What is it? Yeah, judging, which is what we talked about a moment ago. Agreement, right? You see, if you walk out of here and kill somebody, and everybody agrees with you, you've done the right thing, haven't you? It's all wrapped up in agreement. And that's the only thing that can make something right or wrong, is how many people agree with you. And if the whole world agrees with you, you've done the right thing. If they don't agree, you've done the wrong thing. But they're a fallacy. They don't exist. You see, if you have a +1 and a -1, and you put the two of them together, what do you have? You have a 0. They cancel each other out. And so if for every right that exists, there's a society that'll call that right wrong, and for every wrong there's a society that'll call it right, they cancel each other out. The only way something can be right or wrong is by the agreement of other people. But you see, unfortunately, we have been taught that if we are being right, we are expressing that inner perfection. And that's why the worst thing that can happen to you in this world is to be wrong. Have you ever noticed that? You can cuss somebody out, call them names, stupid, fat, and ugly, you know, even kick them in the shins maybe, and they don't get too upset. But man, you tell them they're wrong about one little tiny item, and you got an argument or a fight on your hands, don't you? The worst thing in the world is being wrong, because that's saying you're not really being you, your inner self. That's the subconscious reaction of it. But the reality that is forced upon all of us is this simplicity, and really tune into it and be aware of it. And that's the fact that whatever you are and whatever you have today, you are that and you have that because it makes you right. Whatever you are and whatever you have, you are that and you have that because it makes you right and for no other reason. In other words, if one of you housewives are a lousy housekeeper, and you know you're a lousy housekeeper, and all your friends know you're a dirty housekeeper, and especially your husband knows you're a lousy housekeeper, what must you be to be right? Yeah, you must be a lousy housekeeper, right? That's the only way you can be right. I mean, what do you suppose the husband would say if he came home from work one evening and the house was spick and span? It was spotless, not a speck of dust anywhere. What would he say to the wife? Yeah, what's wrong with you? Fellas, you better tune in, because she's not going to be wrong. She's going to be right the rest of her life if she has to keep a dirty house the rest of her life to do it, you see? Everything you are and everything you have, you are that and you have that because it makes you right. Now, this is one of the reasons why I said you're going to resist about 90% of the concepts we toss out this evening. Because, you see, the moment I say there's no right or wrong, it cancels itself out, we all start resisting. Why? Because 90% of your brain cell patterns are based on right and wrong. 90% of your brain cell patterns are based on getting agreement from the majority of people. And all of a sudden, we are destroying that. And that's the reason you resist. But with all the concepts we discussed tonight, keep this perspective in mind. It does not matter if they are real or not real. It does not matter if they are true or untrue. It does not matter if you believe them or don't believe them. Because you see, it's like when you're extremely cold. You're out in the cold weather and you kind of got a chill. If you start acting like you're warm and thinking like your body's warm, what will happen? The skin temperature will increase and your body will physically become warmer. Now that's not true, is it? I mean, if you're cold, you're cold. You're not warm. You see, that's a lie to act like you're warm when you're cold. But the result of that perspective is more physical warmth in the body. So you see, it's the same with these concepts. It doesn't matter whether they're true or untrue. You don't have to believe them or disbelieve them. And they can't be right or wrong because we've already destroyed that. It's simply if the concepts work to give you more happiness in life, keep them in that perspective. Because the reality is, whatever we are that to make us right. You see, if you are an insomniac and you can't go to sleep, and you know you can't go to sleep at night, and your husband knows it, and all your friends know it, then what must happen to make you right? You must lay awake at nights, true? Or else you must take sleeping tablets. And really tune into this area. You see, if you always tell the child he's stupid, you know, you're always doing some stupid thing like that, what does the child then have to be right? Has to be stupid, doesn't he? Those of you who are parents, really tune in. If you're always telling the child he's wrong, you know, everything you're doing is wrong. Can't you ever do anything right? What must the child be to be right? That's true. He must be wrong to be right. And that's the reality of life. And that child will go through life always doing the wrong thing because that's what makes him right. Everything you are that and you have that because you get agreement from other people. You get recognition for being that from other people. If there's any question marks on this reality that you are that which makes you right, ask the questions at this time. And let me also remind you, as far as the questions are concerned, there is no such thing as a stupid question in this seminar. Because every time somebody finally gets up enough nerve to raise their hands and ask a very stupid question, always 4 or 5 more people look very relieved. They're wanting the same stupid question. Do you know why you're all sitting there not asking questions? Afraid of being wrong, aren't you? People, there's no right or wrong in this room tonight. We just threw it out, okay? So you can ask anything, you can say anything, and you can do anything tonight, and you can't be wrong, okay? You can let go of that fear. Yeah.
Give an example of with everything you have because you're right. I can see the do, but I don't see the have.
Yeah, okay. The question is, could you give an example of everything that you have making you right? Why are you wearing the particular dress that you're wearing tonight? What happened when you purchased it? Did the salesman tell you it was right, look good on you? Get agreement from them? Okay, you see, somewhere along the line you got agreement, right? I mean, you know, and other people know that color looks good on you, and that's a good style of dress for you, and that's a good way to wear your hair, so on and so forth. I'm quite sure that whatever kind of a car you drive, the salesman made it very right for you to drive that car.
To be right, I'd have to not have it.
Yeah. Oh, and there are a lot of people in the world like this. What she said, is that the only way she can be right is everybody else disagrees with her. And there are a lot of people in the world that makes them right. I mean, if you know that every time you're right, other people are going to disagree with you, and other people know that, what makes you right? Having other people disagree with you, right? Sure. That's what makes you right. Yeah. So the question was having a daughter who does things wrong, and she knows she does things wrong. And how can that make her right? Okay, she knows that she's doing the wrong thing, doesn't she? And you know that she's doing the wrong thing. And Mama knows she's doing the wrong thing, and all of her friends know that she does the wrong thing in particular areas.
Let's say she's rebellious, okay?
Yeah, okay, so she's rebellious. She knows it, you know it, Mama knows it, all of her friends know she's rebellious. What would you say to her? What would all these people say to her if she just stopped it completely? If she came in and said, whatever you want, I'll do it, What would people say to her? They'd say, what's wrong with you? You see, they all expect her to be rebellious. They all know she's going to be rebellious. That's what she's getting a recognition for. And that's what makes her right. You see, if you always do something wrong, you always do the wrong thing. Take a child, you start him out, and he's doing the wrong thing, and his teachers know he does the wrong thing, and he's going through life always doing the wrong thing. That is the only way he can be right. We know what that child always does is the wrong thing. And if he didn't do the wrong thing, that's what would make him wrong.
If, like the child had said, you're always wrong, can't you do anything that's right? Doesn't that more or less follow him through life?
Yeah, the question is, doesn't that more or less follow him through life? Unless, fortunately, he'll get in another environment that starts making him right to be right. Yes. Unless, fortunately, somewhere he'll open up. That's why I love to see children, youth, go through this class. It's amazing to watch them. I have teenagers go through this class and they're making C's and D's, and 2 weeks later making A's and B's. Yeah. 2 weeks later, making A's and B's. Yeah, and basically, just in the awareness of that. I mean, it's amazing. We go through life always doing the right thing. And if you go through life always doing the right thing, what are you doing? You're going through life doing what other people think you should do, so they agree with you. Yeah, that's your freedom of always being right. You see, we're reaching a point, though, in evolution where we can begin to let loose of the fear of being wrong and begin to base our lives, our decisions, on the results that we desire in life, rather than having to be right, having to have the agreement of other people. Because, you see, basically, right and wrong are based on fear. The fear of being wrong, the fear of not expressing your perfection. They are basically based on a fear mechanism. And we are living in a country today with relatively little fear as compared to a few generations ago. Now, I know you're all saying, there's all kinds of fear in the world today. But compared to a few generations today, there's no fear in this country, or very little of it. I mean, stop and think of your great-grandmother coming across the plains in a covered wagon. And think of the hours that she spent in fear compared to the fear you've had today. I mean, she had to fear the weather, the heat, and the cold. How much fear do you have of the heat and the cold? She had to fear a wagon wheel breaking down. If you have a flat tire, how much fear do you have? She had to fear the Indians. They had to fear starvation. They had all kinds of fears. If she was awake 16 hours a day, she probably spent 14 of those hours with patterns triggering related to fear. Now, how many minutes of fear, real fear, have you had today? Yeah, most of you would have to total up in probably less than minutes even of the actual fear that you've experienced today. I know you worry about this and that and the other, but as far as fear is concerned, you have experienced very, very little fear today. So you see, the reality is our brain cell patterns that fire today are not related to the fear mechanism as they were generations ago. Youth are already experiencing this. When the child comes in and the child says, I'm quitting school, what's mom and dad say? But you can't quit school. And the child says, why? And what's mom and dad's answer? Because that's wrong. What's the child say? What's wrong about it? You see, he's got no fear mechanism connected with being wrong. He doesn't have brain cell patterns constantly firing related to fear. So there's no fear in him. Now, for some of you, maybe in the older generation, had your parents have said that's wrong, you say, it's wrong, I won't do it. You see, you were still firing a lot of fear patterns, and so it worked for you. But it's not working for the child. So instead of telling the child that they're wrong, and they have to continue with school because it's wrong to drop out, if instead we would base our advice and our communication with you on the results they will achieve, not whether it's right or wrong. I mean, if you drop out of school, this and 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 this will probably happen according to the results of thousands of people who dropped out of school, and the results will be, less money, less income, hard time getting jobs, so on and so forth. That's the results of it. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, if that's the results you want. If you continue in school, this and this and this and this and this and this and this will probably happen, and if you go on to get a college education, this and this, and that will be the results. And there's nothing wrong with that or nothing right about that. That's just the results you'll achieve. Now, take whichever choice you want. If you want these results, drop out of school. If you want these results, continue in school. Then the child will naturally choose whichever results will best express his inner perfection. And that will be whichever results will give him ultimately more happiness in life. Whichever results will give him more happiness in life, that's the result the child will choose. And I can guarantee to you from talking and counseling with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of youth, if you'll communicate with them on that basis, rather than right or wrong, you'll get through to youth with some beautiful, beautiful results.
But what if his result is printed on mine right? Then he is wrong.
So, that's why I say as long as you base it in those terms, as long as you tell a child that's the wrong thing to do, and it's wrong to drop out of school because you're going on welfare and I'll have to support you, you're asking him to base a decision on something he can't identify with, fear. He doesn't have it. Because we're living in a world today where brain cell patterns don't fire according to fear. If you really want him to achieve the results will best express his perfection, his happiness, just explain it to him in terms of results. Yes, not right or wrong. Yeah, just in terms of results. Yeah, and then let him make his choice. In all probability, he will take the one which will best express his inner self, that inner self which desires happiness in life. And it's pretty clear which route will give you more happiness. And that's the desire of the inner self is to express the happiness which you are. Yes, the love which the inner self is. So we've reached a point in evolution where we can start basing our decisions on these results that we desire rather than the fear of being wrong or not getting agreement of other people. Because we're living in a country today where our brain cell patterns don't constantly fire because of fear, because of the fear mechanism. You see, the problem is, if we go through life always doing the right thing, I mean, you always strive to do the right thing, what are you doing? You're going through life doing what other people agree you should do. And that's the only way you can go through life being right. If you always have this need to be right or do the right thing, you're always looking for the right answer to the problem, aren't you? I mean, don't you all want to find the right answer to your problems? And a lot of you have found it and found disastrous results. I mean, how many of you have experienced this? You know, you go out and do the right thing. I mean, Mama knows the right thing for you and Daddy knows, and all your friends say, man, that's the right thing. You should do this, you know. And you do it, and you end up finding catastrophe. Haven't y'all experienced that? Yeah, you know. I mean, here's the lovely young girl, and Mom and Daddy knows that's the right boy for her to marry, and all of her friends know that's the right husband for, you know. And so she ends up marrying him. What happens to the marriage 3 or 4 years later? Yeah, it wasn't so right after all, was it? You see, because the only thing that could make it right was the agreement of other people. And many, many times you have found out that the agreement of other people wasn't the best results for you in life. It was not the best results. In fact, many times the problem is not even related to the answer. Let's say we have an individual who is all wound up in his business, 18 hours a day. He's always at the office, and he's on this trip, and that's what he lives, breathes, and thinks is his business. And all of a sudden he has a heart attack. And he goes into hospital, and the doctor tells him, you've got to slow down. You've got to get you some hobbies and some other interests, and you've got to start fishing, you know, and hunting and so on and so forth. So the fellow takes advice, and he starts going fishing and hunting and camping and backpacking in the mountains. And for the first time in his life, he really starts living. He finds out what it's all about, and he starts really being happy. Now, did that happiness, did the backpacking and the camping and the hunting and fishing, did that have anything to do with a heart attack? No. You see, that answer was there all of his life, wasn't it? He could have started doing that 20 years ago, and he would have never had a heart attack, would he? You see, the heart attack was the problem that caused him to see the answer. And the reality is this. It's the answer that creates the problem, and not a problem that creates an answer. Now, I know that's difficult to really tune into, but if you can gain that perspective, some beautiful, beautiful things will happen in your life. Answers create problems. If you don't see the answer, you're going to see a problem to make you aware of the answer. The answer was there all the time. I mean, 2 plus 2 equals 4 is a problem, isn't it? Could 2 plus 2 be a problem if you didn't have the answer 4? Couldn't, could it? You see, it's the answer that creates the problem. We had that perspective. You see, in school, when the teacher wrote 2 plus 2 equals up on the chalkboard, it didn't bother you. You didn't even think of it a problem, did you? Because you knew what? You knew the teacher already had the answer. You knew the answer already existed. So it was a learning situation. When the chemistry teacher put a formula up on a chalkboard, it wasn't a real problem, was it? Because you knew the answer already existed. And then unfortunately you grew up and you got out into life and you got married. And you thought, wow, you know, I've really got some problems. I've got to support a family, and I've got to get a job, and I've got to make a living, and I've got to pay my bills. Those are all just 2 plus 2's equal 4. They are all problems that we become aware of to make us see the answers. If we saw the answers first, we'd never see the problem. Just an example would be 2 skiers standing at the top of a ski hill. And it's a steep ski hill and it's filled with moguls, one bump after another. And so one skier stands at the top of the hill and sees 1,000 moguls, 1,000 problems between him and the bottom of the hill. The other skier stands over here and he sees 1,000 answers between him and the bottom of the hill. You see, there's 1,000 places to turn as he goes down the hill, because he knows if he goes straight down, he'll kill himself. Now, for the skier who sees the 1,000 problems, he comes to the mogul, and there's a problem which forces him to see an answer, how to turn on it. And then he faces another mogul, another problem, and that forces him to see another answer. There's another place to turn, right? And he sees another mogul, which is another problem. That problem forces him to see another answer. This skier over here just sees answers. There's a turn, there's a turn, there's a turn, and there's a turn. They both have to ski the same hill. They both have to get from the top to the bottom. But which one do you suppose experiences less effort? Yeah, the one who's flowing with the universe, you see. The one who is being a skier and simply seeing the answers, rather than seeing the problems. You see, every mogul is an answer. It's only a problem if you can't see the answer. You've all seen two individuals do exactly the same job. And one of them starts in the job and says, hey, wait a minute, we got a problem, we got to figure this out. And so he's down, figures and figures, and he says, there's the answer. Okay, now let's get going. You know, wait a minute, we got another problem. And he sits down and figures it out. And he starts again. Another problem, until finally he figures out all those problems and he gets the job done. And then you see another individual do identically exactly the same job, and he just starts doing it from beginning to end. He never has any problems. You see, he just saw all the answers that this fellow figured out. But this is an individual who's going through life looking for problems. And so he sees problems. The answers already existed, didn't they? Or this fellow here couldn't have gone through with just answers. They were already there. It's simply that one person saw the answers, the other person saw the problems. You see, the reality is that at this point in our evolution, we still feel that problems create answers. And that's the way we arrive at answers, is through problems. As we continue to evolve, as humanity continues to evolve, hopefully one day they'll forget all about the problem and all they'll do is see answers. But at this point, we're programmed to see problems and allow that to cause us to see the answer. Problem pokes its head up so we can see the answer. If you saw the answer first, you'd never see the problem, would you? You see? But if this is true, then it's essential that we have problems, isn't it? I mean, haven't you all heard it said that, man, if you don't have problems, you're dead? Isn't that true? So if this is true at this point in our evolution, what's the quickest way to solve a problem? If you must have problems to find answers, what's the quickest way to find answers? Or to get rid of problems? What's the easiest way to do it? What? Yeah, commit suicide? Yeah, that might do it. No, but we said, man, you can't forget you got to have problems, you're going to be dead. You know? You find the answers, this is true, but that's what the problems are for. What's the quickest way? If you have to have problems to find answers, but you want to get rid of your problems, how do you get rid of them? How do you let them go? How do you find the answers? Simple, people. You just create more problems. I mean, all you've got to do to solve problems is create some new ones. And that's reality. People, I can solve every problem you've got in your life now except one. Right at this moment. I mean, all you've got to do is come up here and lay your hand across the lectern and let me take an axe and chop it off and watch it fall down the floor, and I'll guarantee you won't have another problem in the world, will you? Except your hand laying there on the floor. I just created a new problem for you and let go of all the other ones. You see? Yeah, that's reality. You see, all of those of you who've gone through the alpha training thought it was really fantastic because it really solved a lot of problems for you, didn't it? People, alpha training didn't solve any problems for you. Do you know what it really did? It just created a bunch of new ones. That's all we did for a week in alpha awareness training. We created new problems for you. We gave you the problem of how to be happy, how to find answers, how to relax, a problem of how to relax, a problem of how to have fun in life, a problem of how to open up more of your mind and use it, a problem of how to recall information. We just give you a bunch of problems, didn't we? Give you a problem of how to eliminate pain. You see, if you're all involved in finding an answer to the problem of being happy, you can't be involved in the problem of being depressed, can you? That's all we did, was give you a new set of problems. And when we give you the problem of being happy, you let go of the problem of being depressed. That's simple. Yeah. That's the way you solve problems. You create new ones. Who are the highest paid people in the world? Problem solvers, they're the lowest paid people in the world. Who are the highest paid people? Problem creators, you better believe it. Who's the highest paid person in a corporation? President. Who creates all the problems in a corporation? President does. All the employees solve them, right? You better believe it. The bigger and the better problems you can create in life, the more money you're going to make. That's very true. You see, you're going to make a lot more money for creating the problem of how to build a 20-story building than you are how to build a 2-story building, aren't you? That's true. Yeah. You see, to solve problems, create new ones. But we must realize that in creating problems and in letting loose of problems, we are living under the law of the vacuum. The law which says nature by law cannot stand a vacuum. In other words, in physics, that means if I'm standing here and I move over here, there's not a vacuum there now, is there? Something has filled the space where I was standing. Now, that same law implicates that two things, identical things, cannot be in the same place at the same time. In other words, two Wally Mentos cannot occupy this same space at the same time, can they? So, Nature by law says it cannot stand a vacuum. If you take something out, something else has got to fill a space. Or you can't put two things in the same space at the same time. Now, it's very necessary to understand that law, because that law controls mental functioning, the brain-mind functioning, the same as it relates to physics. In other words, you see, you can't let go of a problem and throw it away unless you have another problem to fill the vacuum. By the same token, you can't put two problems in the same space at the same time. So if you bring in one problem, you're forcing another one out. Or if you let one go, take it out, you've got to have another one to take its place. Let me point this out in another way, which has been explained many times, but I think points it out very, very beautifully to you. If all of you women in the room wanted a brand new wardrobe, what's the quickest way to get it? Everything new. What's the quickest way to get it? Sure, throw out the old wardrobe. Everything you own. So you say, oh, not me, I can't even afford to buy a new pair of hose. Well, I'll guarantee you, if while you're in this seminar this evening, a robber broke in and stole every piece of clothing you own, you're not going to go around the next 6 months nude, are you? No, it's created a vacuum, and that vacuum is going to be filled. The vacuum will be filled. So let's be aware that we're living under this law in relationship to problems as well, in relationship to the mental dimension as well as the dimension of the physical. So let's talk about some ways of letting go of problems. The first step in letting go of any problem in your life is to recognize the problem is okay. It's okay to have the problem. I mean, I don't care what it is. It's okay to be big and fat. It's okay to be thin and skinny. It's okay to be broke. It's okay to be depressed. It's okay to have ill health. It's okay to be frightened of the dark. It's okay to have acrophobia, claustrophobia. These things are really okay. And I mean totally okay. And the reason they must be okay is because your brain-mind functioning operates under another law which says, as ye believe, so shall it be done unto you. It has to operate under that law. But you see, there are varying degrees of belief. What are some of the things you really believe in strongly? What are some of them? You know why you're all sitting here not saying anything? Because you're all afraid you might say something wrong. Friends, there's no right or wrong here this evening, okay? You can say anything on your mind, and you can't be wrong. So what are some of the things you believe in? Okay, sunshine, the things we believe in stronger than sunshine. What are some other things we believe in?
God.
Believe in God, true. There are things we believe in stronger than God. What are some other things we believe in? Pardon?
Overcome. Work to overcome.
Work to overcome, true, but the things we believe in stronger than this. What are some other things we believe in? Some other things you believe in.
Faith.
Believe in faith, things we believe in stronger than faith. Okay, we could go on and on and on. The reality is simply this. The things that you believe in stronger than anything else in life are the things you fear. That's the strongest belief system you have, are those things you fear. I'll guarantee you, if you're walking down a narrow path through the woods and you come face to face with a grizzly bear, you're going to believe in that grizzly bear stronger than you ever believed in God or yourself or love or anything else in the world, aren't you? I mean, if you believed in God that strongly, with that much effort and emotion, you'd be getting answers to all your prayers, wouldn't you? You see, it's simply we put more energy, more emotion into the things we fear than the things that we so-called believe in. So you see, what we really should say is there's belief. And that's the things we normally believe in. I believe I'm Wally Mento, and I believe in God, and we believe in night and day, and we believe in gravity, and that's believing. And then there's really believing. And really believing are the things in life you worry about. I mean, maybe you worry about being overweight. You're really believing in being overweight because you put more energy, more emotion into the things you worry about, don't you? And then there's really, really believing, and that's the things in life you fear. And the message is old. The message says, that which I feared the most came upon me. And the reality of that message is simply this. That which I really, really believed in came upon me. Because you see, you use identically the same parts of brain-mind functioning to fear something as you do to what you call believe in something. Except you put more effort, more energy into it. So that becomes really, really believing. And that's the essential reason why your problems must become okay. And if your problems are okay, that will solve 90% of the problems you have in life without even worrying or thinking or putting any effort into solving the problem. It's that simple. You see, if it's okay to be fat, that means what? You don't have to worry about being fat, do you? You see, if you don't have to worry in it, that means you don't really have to believe in being fat. That means your computer, your goal-structuring brain here, then can give you what really is right for you, the proper weight. But you see, it doesn't do you any good to get up in the morning and program yourself with your goals to lose weight today. And do that 2 or 3 times a day. And then diet 2 or 3 times a day while you're eating to lose weight. And spend the rest of the day worrying about being fat. What are you really believing in? You're really believing in being fat all day long, and that's exactly what's going to happen to you. So that's the reason your problems must be okay. In other words, have you ever in your life worried about something if it was okay? You just don't worry about it, do you? I mean, it's okay. You don't have to worry about it. You certainly don't have to fear it. And that lets your computer give you the answer that best expresses your inner self. Now, if you have a problem convincing yourself that it really is okay, you might think of it in this manner. You see, there are a lot of beautiful, beautiful people in this world who are broke. Don't you know some really fantastic, beautiful people who are broke? Yeah, so it must be okay if you're broke too, huh? I mean, if some of the greatest people you know are broke, it's got to be okay if you're broke. Don't you know some really fantastic, beautiful people who are fat? I mean, if that's true, it must be okay if you're fat. I mean, Churchill was fat. Wasn't he a fantastic man? I mean, if he can be that great and be fat, it's okay if you're fat, you see? Don't you know people who have ill health that are really great people? Yeah, if you really want to stop and analyze it, the greatest people who've ever lived on earth have all died. Realize that? Must be okay if you do too, huh? You see, you can be the greatest person on earth and still die. There's nothing to worry about. Yeah, you don't have to fear it. The greatest people in the world do it. So it really is okay. The moment it becomes okay, you no longer have to fear it. Now, I wish I could explain this in some very complicated, difficult, intricate terms, And then you'd all say, oh yeah, it's simple, I understand it. But it's so simple, I cannot complicate it. You can solve 90% of your problems in life without doing anything about the problem if it just simply becomes okay to have the problem. You see, your brain, people, is designed to give you happiness. Your brain is a computer that is designed to see answers, to see solutions. That's the way it's designed. But it operates under a law. As you believe, so shall it be done. That's the law it has to operate under. If you're worrying about the problem, you are believing in the problem, and that's what the brain has to dwell on and not the answer. You see, it's that simple. Now, I said it will eliminate 90% of your problems. The other 10% you're going to have to do something about yourself as well as letting them be okay. I mean, if you leave the class tonight and you go out to get in your car and it's got a flat tire, you can sit down by the tire and say, okay, I love flat tires, and it's not going to blow it up, is it? You still got to change the tire. You see, that's in that 10%. But recognize it will solve 90% of the problem of a flat tire. I mean, don't you all know people that it's really not okay to have flat tires with them? And when do they always have their flat tires? Always when they're in a hurry to get somewhere or when it's raining, right? Now, that's when they always have their flat tires. Rainy weather, pouring rain, and so they got to get out and they slip and fall down. And it always happens to people when it's not okay to have a flat tire, And they get the trunk open, and they dig through and they smash their finger getting the tire out, and the jack won't work, and it falls off the jack when they get it jacked up. And finally an hour later, messy, dirty, torn clothes, and mad as a hornet, they've got the tire fixed. And then there's the other fellow. It's okay if he has a flat tire, He goes out and the tire's flat, and he whistles and sings and gets the jack out and jacks it up, takes the tire, puts on another one. 10 minutes later, he's on his way. You see, that's what happens if it's okay to have flat tires.
How do I program myself, or how do I practice, on how not to fight what I know I fight now?
Yeah. So again, the question is, well, how do I apply it? That I'm saying, well, don't fight the problem. Say it's okay. Okay, so it's just starting through life with, first of all, the little things that you can say are okay, I mean, you can get up in the morning and say, well, I've had smelly feet all my life, so it's okay if I have smelly feet, you see? And you get a little brain cell pattern that says, hey, something's okay that I didn't think was quite okay before, And, and you can look at somebody and they never comb the hair right, but you've finally gotten used to it. You say, well, it really is okay if he wants to comb his hair backwards, or if he wants to wear it long or wear it short. You start with just the little things until you start getting a pattern going up here that begins to say things are okay. Now, if you're really going to use this philosophy, and if you're going to use it to solve 90% of your problems, it's got to encompass the universe. You see, the world really is okay exactly like it is. But you start off with the little things, okay, and don't worry about the major things. Because you've got to get a predominant pattern going that begins to say things are okay. And once you reach the point that the world's okay, fantastic, beautiful, beautiful things happen. Now, you'll find out in a few moments why that's so. Why it's so. Because that's the beginning of the most beautiful thing in the world. to say that something is okay. You start with the little things, just the little things. You know, I mean, when you sleep 10 minutes late, that's an easy place to stop hating yourself. It's okay if I slept 10 minutes late, you know. It really is. Enjoy it for a change. Yeah, and you'll find out that you'll make up for that 10 minutes a dozen times all day long because it was okay. You see, if it wasn't okay to sleep that 10 minutes, you're going to be 10 minutes short all day long, aren't you? The subconscious is programmed that manner. If it's okay to take an extra 10 minutes, your subconscious will make it up for you. Yeah. So just starting off with little things until you get a predominant pattern that says the world is okay. It really is. Everything about it. Any other questions in that area? Like I say, I wish I could make it complicated, but it's that simple. Yes.
How do you adjust to everybody else's reaction that is not thinking the same as you are?
It's got to be okay, it's okay, period. You can't say it's okay, but it's okay because, you know, it's okay because Wally said so, it's okay because I can make up the time, it's okay, but I don't believe it. You can't go beyond the it's okay. It stops right there.
So it must be okay, absolutely okay. If your nose is too big, make it okay to have a big nose. And then you won't look in the mirror and just see the nose each time you look in the mirror. If you make it okay, then that problem's gone and you can walk through life without the problem of a big nose. If you're too tall, make it okay to be too tall because the world's always been too short. And the moment you make it the world just the right size, that problem vanishes in your life. If you've been too short all your life, what's the world been? It's been too tall. The okay concept is absolutely magnificent. If you have a problem, don't resist the problem, make the problem okay, and 90% of the problem disappears, leaving only 10% for you to solve on the physical dimension. And now let's go with another concept, a physical application, how you can take a piece of paper and you can write down as you follow these instructions to find out where you are in your being and doing and having, where you are in your flow with the universe. So once more, back to Wally, and a graphic illustration of how you can chart where you are on your steps of flowing.
Now we're going to take a few moments to diagram a manner in which you can go home and diagram anything that you want to accomplish flowing with the universe. And this is some homework that if you do not do it, you will not get the results out of this class that you could possibly achieve. And this is a manner in which you can diagram it actually on a notebook. Preferably at home you would have a legal pad, a long legal pad to diagram it something like this. But it's putting at the top of your notepad whatever it is in life that you want to be. And let's take something that might relate to most of us as a title here, and let's put down being rich. I assume that most of us could use a little more richness. Now, in talking about being rich, at this point, I'm talking about monetary value. I know there are many, many types of richness, but I'm talking about, for the moment, cold, hard cash. Because I think far more of us have hang-ups about being rich as far as money is concerned than we do as far as happiness or friends or many other areas. So at the top of your page, put the title of whatever it is that you want to be. Being rich, being happy, being successful, being a teacher, being a mother, whatever it is that you desire to be. Then subtitles underneath that will be being, what you would be, and over here what you wouldn't be. Okay, so what you would be being rich and what you wouldn't be being rich. So let's pretend for a few moments now that you are all rich, you are all millionaires, all right? Now, for the few moments, being a millionaire, what are some other things that you would be? What would you be? You have $1 million. Be happy, okay? Very good. Okay, now I hear a few people disagreeing with that, saying that, you know, you wouldn't be happy with a lot of money. Realize that if you have brain cell impressions in here that say rich people are unhappy and you become rich, what else must you be? You must be unhappy. So if you have the desire to be rich and you know that all rich people are unhappy, you better change a few brain cell patterns, all right? What else would we be being rich? Be healthy. What else would you be being rich? That's right, might as well be healthy. Successful. What else would we be being rich? Pardon? Industrious. Popular. Generous. independent. Okay, we could go on and on. In making up your own list, I encourage you to put down at least 10 things that you would be being rich. If it does not allow you to be at least 10 other things, then perhaps it's not worth being rich. And this must be your own individual list. This list may not fit you. Now, we're living under the law of the vacuum. So if you are going to be these things, we must balance it. So what are some of the things that you wouldn't be? Wouldn't be sad? Okay, we don't necessarily want opposites, so let's see if we can come up with some others. Sad, what else? Wouldn't be miserable, kind of comes in the same area, but good. Wouldn't be broke, wouldn't be poor, okay. Wouldn't be worried. Wouldn't be stingy. Greedy, about the same thing, good. Any others? Hungry. Okay, we could go on and on that list. For the sake of time, you complete your own and make it an individual list, at least 10. Okay, then we go on with things that you would do and things that you wouldn't do. You have $1 million. What would you do? Travel always seems to be at the head of the list. What else would you do? Help others? Painting, somebody said. Hobbies. Retire.
I would apply it on my debts.
Apply it on your debts as far as it go, huh? What are some other things you would do? Pardon? Buy? We could put down buy, but really that wouldn't come under doing because you're buying so that you can have something. What are some other things you would do?
Worry.
Worry? Okay, now this would be very accurate for many of you, so be aware of this. If you have strong brain cell pressures that rich people have to worry and you become rich, you will worry. That's reality. There are many, many rich people who are multimillionaires and don't worry. That's one of the reasons they became rich or are rich, being rich, is because they don't want to worry in life. What other things would you do? Invest. Okay, we can put down invest. Okay, we could go on and on this list. For the sake of time, you make up your own list there, and again, at least 10 things under it. What are some of the things you wouldn't do? You're a millionaire. What wouldn't you do? Wouldn't worry. Some other things you wouldn't do?
Wouldn't stay home.
Wouldn't work. Wouldn't stay home. Now realize why the list has to be individual. There are some people who would be millionaires so they could stay home. There are others who would be millionaires so they could travel all the time and never stay home. So it must be individual for you to balance it out. Some other things you wouldn't do. Wouldn't keep your same wardrobe? Yeah, that would come under the area of having, really, though. Some other things you wouldn't do. Okay, continue on that list on your own when you're making up your list, all right? For the sake of time, we'll go on into the have list and the wouldn't have. What are some of the things you would have? What would you have? You're a millionaire. Money, new car, new home, what else? New wardrobe, boat, plane, maid, gardener, freedom. Notice how fast the have list is coming? So fast I can't even write it down. Do you know why? Because all of your life you thought for you to ever be rich, you had to have all these things first. All your life you've been programming yourself upstream of the universe. That's why. You see, you've never really thought about being rich, have you? You've only thought about having what you would have after you're being rich. Being rich comes first if you want to flow with the universe without effort. If you want to be a millionaire without effort, the being part comes first. And that's essential. Now, you can do it the other way. There have been a lot of millionaires who have become millionaires flowing upstream with the universe, from having to doing into being. But the problem that exists, many times the individual doesn't realize they're going upstream. And when you're paddling your boat upstream and you stop to rest a while, what happens? Float back down, don't you? Haven't we seen many, many people that have worked and slaved with all the having, then all the doing, and finally become rich and said, wow, I've got it made. and 3 years later they were bankrupt. We see it time and time again. We see many people who have become many things in that area, and when they've arrived, they say, wow, I've got it made, and a year or two later, they're right back where they started again. You see, if you're flowing with the universe, you can be dozens of things at the same time. A beautiful example was Walter Russell. Study his life. There was a human being who started out being things. You know when he started out being a sculpture? On the train trip to Florida, to accept an assignment for doing a piece of sculpture for the United Nations. He was genius in 5 of the fine arts because he started out in being the first. So study his life. You'll get an example of what we're talking about. There's a man who flowed with the universe in everything that he was being. He started out being first and ended up having in the end. You see, there are very few people in the world that could do a piece of sculpture without having to go through college and studying sculpture and, and sweat and toil and slave half their lifetime until finally they have enough ability and have enough fame to do a piece of sculpture for the United Nations. Walter Russell started out being a sculpturist the same day he accepted the commission for it. Study his life. You'll get an example of what I'm talking about. Pardon? Why did they pick him? Because he was a sculptor. A little more clarification. Because he was a sculptor. Because he was being a sculptor. It's that simple, friends. You start out being. That flows into doing, and that flows into having. The interesting thing is if you start out here, you're beyond agreement, aren't you? You don't need anybody's agreement, do you? Fascinating, isn't it? You go upstream of the universe, you have to have other people's agreement to get there. Now, once you start in being, you start beyond agreement. You don't have to have it. That's the reason it worked for him. Yes. Are these people using their alpha state to be? Yes, they are. You'll find out why when we close off this session this evening. They are there, yes. The question is, are they automatics? You are all automatics in that sense as far as the alpha state is concerned, except that you are educated out of it. All children are in the subjective level. They are only educated out of it. A few greats like Einstein, who flunked math in 4th grade because he was such a daydreamer, never got educated out of daydreaming. He never got educated out of the subjective level. And so he expressed his genius from that level. Okay, now the thing that I want you to recognize, self-talk with me, zero in on this. Do you need $1 million to be happy? Do you need a dime? No. Do you need $1 million to be healthy? Do you need 10 cents to be healthy? Do you need $1 million to be successful? Or a dime? Do you need a single dime to be industrious? Or do you need 10 cents to be popular? Do you need any money whatsoever, a dime even, to be generous? Or to be independent? No. I know people on the other side of the track that don't have a dime in their pocket. And they are independent. They don't owe a penny to the world. The thing I want you to realize is you don't have to have 10 cents to be a millionaire. You don't have to have a dime to be a millionaire. You can be a millionaire this moment because that's all there is to being a millionaire. That's it. I mean, would you have all those great things you put on your have list if you couldn't be these? Wouldn't make sense, would it? That's being a millionaire. And when you start there, it flows from being into doing. And the doing flows into the having the $1 million. Let's just take a few examples. If we have 2 individuals, and they are both applying for a job in your company or corporation, and you're going to hire them for a really top position, and one of the individuals comes in, he has gone through college, he has his degree in that area, he has experience in that area, he also is a sad person, he's broke right now, he's worried, he's stingy, he's even a little hungry. Then we have another individual, no education, he hasn't gone to college, he hasn't even had experience. But when he comes in, he's happy, he's healthy, he's successful, he's industrious, he's popular, he's generous, he's independent. Which one would you hire? You bet. You'd hire the one that's already being rich, wouldn't you? And so he ends up then doing, flowing into it, what rich people do, working at high-paid jobs for $100,000 a year, and he ends up having his $1 million effortlessly. He starts out being rich first. He flows to the universe. Yes.
Couldn't you switch all those wooden bees over to the bees and vice versa and and then say, okay, this
Yeah.
is me, I'm a millionaire. I'm going to be sad, and I'm going to be broke, and I'm going to worry. Well, you'll be broke. Worry. Well, you will be broke because you didn't have the whole billion that you wanted.
Yeah, the question is, couldn't we just
Money to do everything you want.
couldn't we just switch these lists and put all the wouldn't be over here, sad, worried, stingy, hungry, so on and so forth, over in the B side and still be rich? You would have a very warped idea of being rich. You see, the reality would be this. You could put all these things over here, you would not be rich, you may still have $1 million. Are you clear?
Well,
having $1 million is not being rich, is it?
Being down here, we're broke and worried and stingy and hungry and everything else.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to be worth 14 million.
Okay, let's stop talking about it now and zero in. You are talking about an individual who is being poor, who is not being rich, but who has $1 million. But if you are being rich, it's very easy to end up having $1 million. You can be sad and have $1 million. That's the way most people get it, flowing against the universe. They end up having $1 million, but they're never being rich because they're being sad and worried and fearful and all the rest. I'm talking about how to be rich and end up having $1 million because you're being rich, flowing with the universe. I'm talking about how to be happy and end up having all the things that go with happiness because you start out with being happy first. You see, most of you think you have to have a lot of things to be happy, don't you? And that's why you don't experience much happiness in your life. If you'd realize having things that you call happiness or that make you happy have nothing to do with being happy. They have nothing whatsoever to do with it. That's going upstream with the universe. Yeah. So you can do it either way, and either way is okay because people have arrived both ways.
Either way is okay because people have arrived both ways. Having, doing, and being have to have first, so I can do, so I can be. Upstream of the universe, and if you forget to paddle, you drift back, or just enter in being and let the rest of it take care of itself. Automatically flow to the doing, automatically flow to the having those results in your life. Let's take a few moments now to reassess and review. Remember the statement, I wish I could make it complicated? Listen to what we said. Listen and circle with both of us. The universe flows in being, doing, and having. And remember, we subconsciously are all tied up in the having stage. Consciously, we have learned the game of positive thinking, of psycho-cybernetics. We have learned the game that we can just do and do until we be. But subconsciously, we're still tied up in the having stage. You see, if that bulldozer scrunched your car, a little bit of you would be scrunched. If all the possessions in your house were to burn, and you watched them burn, a little of them would burn with it. And that's not something you be, that's something you have. We must get to the place, consciously, subconsciously, and perhaps unconsciously, to just stay in the world of being. Because anything we be will result in the doing, and then results in the physical dimension of having. Be happy. Just be happy, and you will do happy things, and the physical dimension comes into play where a smile comes on your lips. Be depressed. Just be depressed, and with no effort, you will do depressed things. You'll run your car into the side of the garage so you can have a dent in the fender, and then you can have something to be depressed about. Circle, circle, circle. Remember, right and wrong do not exist. Those are human guidelines. The tomato does not judge. It spends its life in being a tomato plant, making the stem and the leaves and the blossom, and just giving you and having the best tomatoes it can have, but it must start from being. Plants are good examples of this. They do not have that thinking mechanism, the guidelines that we as the humans put on ourselves, right and wrong and good and bad. A dandelion planted next to a rose never reached out and judged it. It never reached out and took a swipe at it. Have you ever seen two fight in the garden? We as a human might judge and fight about where they're planted in the garden and say a dandelion doesn't belong with a rose, but they grant total being. They do not judge. No right or wrong, the total right to be. No right or wrong, no good, no bad, just being. And when we go into the area of being and quit judging, 90% of all the problems in the world disappear. 90% of the problems are simply from the judgment and the fear of being right or wrong, or we must be good or we must be bad. You see, you're not like me, and I'm not like you, so one of us is wrong, and it sure isn't me. And worse yet, you're not like me, and I'm not like you, so one of us is wrong, and it's me, and the rest of the world is right. The greatest sin in the world is to be wrong. Call me nasty, call me ugly, call me anything, but then say I'm wrong, and you have a fight on your hands. Have you ever had anybody walk up to you and say, you should read this book? And immediately, what does your brain cell pattern say? Why should I read that book? What's wrong with me that I should read that book? If you want somebody to read the book, walk up with a book and say, this book excites me. Look what it did for me. I found out 7 things to change in my life. And they'll say, let me read it. But the moment we have any inkling that we're being judged, that we're being wrong, we will back off. Your husband comes home drunk every Saturday night, lipstick on the collar. What do you know he's going to do? And the first night he comes in totally sober and nice and clean, what do you say to him? What's wrong with you? And recognize he's not going to be wrong. We fight wars because one side is right and one side is wrong. You know, if we take a moment to look at the seed and leave the right and wrong and the fear out of it, and the guidelines of just what are the results going to be, we could very quickly calculate how many we would lose on each side, and then if we want to fight a war because we need to deplete the population, 300,000 on one side and 300,000 on the other, fine, we could go ahead and do it. I had 12 people around me one time, and they weren't with me because they wanted to be there. They were simply there because their probation officer told them to come talk to me. They were all drug people, and we sat down in a quiet state of meditation and explained it's not right or wrong or good or bad that you take drugs. But I will tell you one thing, in the next 10 years it's going to get a result in your life. I want you to sit quietly and think. Not it's right or wrong. Throw those guidelines out. Will this get the result I want in life? And they all quietly thought, and they opened their eyes, and they said, Verle, haven't thought of it that way. Really haven't thought of it that way. We've been all the time trying to prove society that it's right, and it's okay if we take drugs. You bet it's okay. And to a person, both man and woman, they said the system and the things they were doing now, taking the drugs, would not give them the results that they want in life. Waste not one more moment in your life judging right or wrong or good or bad. Pick the seed that you want so that you may go forth and get the result you want in life. Mothers and fathers, circle with us. If you want to communicate with your youth, leave the fear out, leave the right and wrong out, and talk about results. It's okay if he drops out of high school, but that's going to give him a result, and explain the result. And as soon as the young person sees that result, he's going to know what he wants to do. The inner person will take him in the right thing for him. It's not right or wrong that you divorce. Look at the seeds of divorce. If you get separation, what's the result of that? If you remarry, what's the result of that? If you stay single, what's the result of that? Look at the seeds and the results, and you will pick the right trail for you. Did you hear Wally? We're living in a world without any fear. It doesn't really exist. How many minutes in the last few weeks have you had of real fear? You see, if you have a flat tire, you call the 3A. If the lights go out, you call the power company. If the fire goes out, you get a match and light it. Coming across the plains, if the fire went out and you had no matches and there was no sun, or you didn't have a looking glass to start a new one, you could have froze. So there was fear then, so we're not guided by fear. So quit trying to guide our lives with this fear. Look for the seed of results and watch what happens in your life. And your inner consciousness will guide you to that perfect place, that perfect time, that perfect peace. And it will become a habit. And you will approach life that way with no effort. Quit arguing with yourself about the goods and bads. Let it flow from the real inner self. And take the results in life by simply starting out and being. Look at the seed of divorce. Look at the seed of quitting school. Look at the seed of being an alcoholic. Look at the seed of weight. Look at the seed of drugs. And if you don't like the results that's going to come from that seed, then start being something else. Just be in another area. As we finish this tape, it has been a special pleasure now to have you share with me my brother, who I deem to be one of the greatest awareness teachers in the field of awareness today. It's been my total pleasure to introduce him to you. And you will hear more and more from us as we begin to share the platforms of awareness. I trust you circled both with him and with me. Thank you for sharing this tape. Thank you for being with us. And from this moment on, from both of us, anything you desire to be in your life, start being now, because remember, the being state is non-physical. To be that millionaire, all the things that you would be that you are not now, or all the things that you would be if you had that $1 million, you can be now. Start being that. Watch your life unfold in caring, sharing, and in happiness, standing on the perfect top of the triune of spiritual, mental, and physical, right at the very top. And so from both of us, we would like to say thank you for sharing this tape, and looking forward to a new series that we share in the year of 1977. Thank you for listening from both Wally and Verle. God bless and good night.